As Kirby Smart heads into his 9th season in Athens, the Georgia program is as healthy as it's ever been. It's healthier than any program in college football. It's championship or bust in Athens right now. I'm your host, Dave Shumate, here on the SEC Unfiltered platform, 10-year SEC personnel veteran in college football. This is one of the more unusual ones. These are, you know what segment this is. You can see on the thumbnail. What is success for Georgia in 2024? This is one of the easier black and white segments I've done for all 16 teams here in the SEC. It's national championship or bust. It's national championship. I mean, let's call it what it is. The guys played for, 3, 1, 2, back-to-back. Last year, you could have made an argument they could have been in. I think, again, this is totally overused, I should say. They were a top 4 team in college football last year, in my opinion. And if we're always trying to get the best 4 teams in college football, now the best 12 with the playoff moving to 12, Georgia has an argument to be in. But again, this is the 2024 season. So heading into this 2024 season, before I get into the schedule, and again, it's been much harder than it's been for Georgia here in the last 2 years, heading to the 2022-2023 season. But again, we got to start talking about, outside the record, 2 things if I'm a Georgia fan. Outside of the wins and losses, and my program is probably one of 2 to 3 schools in the country that it's championship or bust. It's Georgia, Ohio State, and probably Alabama right now still. And I think Alabama fans, like I mentioned, if you want to go back and watch that one a little bit, not making this an Alabama video, but I thought it was 10-2, make the playoffs. After that, it was icing on the cake, gravy on the mashed potatoes. You can go back and I remember that script verbatim. Remember that statement verbatim, what I said about that. Remember my notes. That's what it is. I think it's a little different for Alabama this year. I really think Ohio State and Georgia, it's true national championship or bust this year. Maybe even for Ohio State just beating Michigan. But for Georgia, it's national championship or bust. Last year was unacceptable. And I think this is the first year since heading into the 2021 season, 2021 season, that Kirby Smart could use. They have that edge. They have the chip on their shoulder. Hey, we didn't finish the mission last year. Carson, we didn't finish the mission last year. Nazir, we didn't finish the mission last year. Raylan Wilson, C.J. Allen, Oscar Delp, we didn't finish the mission last year. He can go say that to all his leader, Tate Ratledge. We didn't finish the mission last year, guys. In that Georgia team room in the Butts-Mehre facility, I can. It's all off season, and this is again not saying Kirby Smart and even guys like Nick Saban don't get me wrong. There's no 2 more guys that hate losing more than them. But I think they like the challenge of resetting it. I mean, like, hey, we got a challenge. I got something I can always pull out of my back pocket if my team starts to get a little comfortable, content in the offseason. I think those 2 guys thrive in that situation. They get real value out of that. So I think you're going to see Kirby Smart's best this year. I think you're going to see his best. But if I was a Georgia fan, 2 things specifically I want to see before we get into the records. Let's get the interior of that defense back, Georgia. Glenn Shumate. Let's get the proof's in the pudding. I mean, Glenn Shumate's arguably the best linebacker coach, defense coordinator in the country. I mean, he really is. Just dudes left and right since he's been there, being first-round draft pick, Butkus Awards winner. And Nakobe Dean, Roquan Smith, Channing Tindall. Like there's he's had a lot of big-time backers since he's been there that he's developed. But last year, they gave up 112 yards per game, finished 16th in the country. It's good for a lot of teams. That's not good in Athens. It's not good under Kirby Smart and Glenn Shumate defense. Just for a record, in 2022, Georgia only gave up 81.2 yards per game. They gave up 112 last year. Now, I know injuries had something to do with it. Probably their most veteran seasoned linebacker last year, who's now at Kentucky, I think one of the more under-the-radar players in the SEC, Jamon Dumas-Johnson, was out. But I think there's some room for improvement. I like the interior of this defensive line. I really do. I like Nazir Stackhouse. I like the Warren Brinsons. I like the Jordan Halls. I like even on the edge there where they do play with it. Michael Williams. I like him in that situation. Inside backers, Small Munden. I mentioned C.J. Allen, Raylan Wilson earlier. Throw in Jalen Walker. I think they're deep at inside linebacker. I think they're better up front. I think this is if I'm a Georgia fan, I want to see us get back to that Georgia. Hey, you aren't running on us. Opposing teams. Now in today's game, the game's more spread. You're not going to see the 2008 through 2011 Nick Saban, Kirby Smart defenses at Alabama, those defensive numbers and rushing numbers, because the game's more spread out. We're sideline to sideline now. You're not going to see that. But for today's numbers, they probably want to get back in that 81.2 yards per game given up back in 2022. And I think they have the depth to do it this year. I think they're going to be better there. And then offensively, the obvious. Who makes up for the production loss from Brock Bowers at tight end and Ladd McConkey at the receiver? And I think it's going to be by committee at both positions. I mean, at tight end, you got Oscar Delp is back, played some when Brock Bowers was out last year with the tightrope surgery. Then they brought in Stanford transfer Ben Yurcik. The past 3 years at Stanford, Yurcik earned some sort of all Pac-12, RIP Pac-12 recognition. He started all 29 games that he played in, put up around 1,300 yards, 5 touchdowns, 108, 9 catches, something like that. Also got used in the running game, similar to how Brock Bowers was used. I mean, Yurcik over here had 114 yards on 14 carries. Like I mentioned, Bowers did the same thing. So I think it's going to be a little bit by committee between Oscar Delp and Ben Yurcik coming over there from Stanford. Then I think on the outside at the receiver position, replacing Ladd McConkey, who was an underrated recruit, grew up a big Tennessee fan. We know the story. Cortez Hankton, Todd Hartley, Kirby Smart all stood on the table for him when Tennessee wouldn't even offer. So we know that story. So I think it's going to be a more committee approach here, guys. I think Dom Levitt, talking to people over there at Georgia, they really like his spring. They think he took it to the next level. Remember the former Missouri transfer. And Levitt was second receptions last year for Georgia. It wasn't bad in 2023. 54 grabs, 613 yards, 4 touchdowns. I think another guy to keep an eye on. We saw little glimpses at the punt return position for him in the SEC championship game against Alabama. Anthony Evans. And then we're waiting. Dylan Bell and Arian Smith have all the ability, all the speed in the world to be two explosive threats, can take the top off the defense at the third level, could be an awesome weapon for Carson Beck. I think both Bell and Arian Smith bring a dynamic there. And it's first-year head coach, wide receiver coach James Coley's back in Athens. I know Georgia fans don't have great memories from the OC times, but I think Kirby Smart changed his ways. I think he'd tell you he always loved James Coley as a position coach, as a recruiter down in that South Florida area, and then as a developer, since he's been really everywhere, he's developed receivers. So I like the James Coley hire. No one personally thinks he does a phenomenal job being there for his players, but also developing them as players on the football field as well. So I think that's another big-time addition to that staff. But so before we get into the schedule, 2 things. And the schedule is going to be very black and white here, guys. I want to see that run defense get back on the interior. Let's get it back. They have the guys. Nazir Stackhouse, Michael Williams, Warren Brinson, Jordan Hall. Let's go. And I like the backer depth. Like I said, Small Munden, C.J. Allen, Raylan Wilson, Jalen Walker. Then offense, the obvious. It's not going to take a step back here with Mike Bobo. I know they've lost probably their 2 best weapons in Bowers and McConkey, but I think it's by committee. They got 2 solid guys at the tight end position to help step up by committee, and Oscar Delp and Ben Yurcik. And I think they got some guys like Dominic Lovett who kind of understands this is his chance to be that number 1 receiver for Carson Beck in 2024. And you got some guys unproven but have shown ability in Anthony Evans, Dylan Bell, and Arian Smith as well to step up. But from a schedule standpoint, remember, what is success for Georgia? Let's show the schedule. Opening up with Clemson and Mercedes-Benz. If I'm Georgia, I like this, first of all. Remember that chip on the shoulder I was talking about Kirby Smart's going to be able to have this year heading into 2024 because they didn't finish the mission last year? Losing to Alabama in the SEC championship game knocked them out of the playoffs. I think you got that, and then you see a team that's been on top of the game the past decade, right, wrong, or indifferent. I know people have been throwing their shots at them the last 2 years for underachieving some, but still, it's Clemson, guys. In Atlanta, opening weekend, Labor Day. It's a big one. That's going to have Georgia's attention all off season as they're with Scott St. Clair in the weight room at the Buttsmere facility as they're getting ready for the 2024 campaign. Already pissed off about not finishing 2023. So that's going to be a tough matchup. I don't see Georgia losing it, though. It wouldn't be the most shocking thing in the world, but I don't see them losing it. Tennessee Tech, Golden Eagles heading to Stanford. I don't see a loss there, really. At Kentucky, game's always kind of close, but I think Georgia always out-talents them. I'm never going to call that a loss heading this season. That's a win. Bye week. Then at Alabama, it's going to be a tough one heading to Bryant-Denny Stadium. I think Georgia gets this one, though. I think this is the year, Kalen DeBoer's first year. I think Bama's going to have some question marks in that secondary. I like Georgia, even though it's on the road. They're going to have this one circled. Remember, Alabama ruined their season last year. They kind of got to get that monkey off their back, and I know they beat Alabama in 2021 or in the 2022 national championship game, technically in January of 2022. But still, Alabama's had Georgia's number since 2008 for the most part, except one game in 2021, the national championship game. Auburn at home, I think Hugh Freeze and them should be improved. Younger roster, though, heading into Sanford Stadium. Their first road game, Auburn, by the way. I don't like that for Auburn. They're not going to get it done in Sanford there. I don't think Auburn's won in Sanford since 2005, I think, when Brandon Koch is the quarterback. Mississippi State the next week comes to Sanford. I think that's going to be a win. At Texas, circle this one as one of the first. I think there's only one or two on the schedule that I think they can legitimately lose. I think this one, and it's a difficult schedule, but this one, circle that one. It's going to be a wild weekend in Austin that weekend. You got the Formula One racing, I think, going on. Hotels going to be out the wazoo, whatever. Talking strictly football here. Texas. This will be, I think this, outside of the Texas at Texas A&M game, is the game of the SEC. I know what people are going to, game of the year in the SEC, second most important one. I think people are going to be, well, what about Georgia at Alabama? We've seen that a lot, and it's important. Don't get me wrong. It's where there's no more divisions. Top two teams go play in Atlanta. Some argue you'd like to be that third spot. You want to play that extra game. But at Texas, circle that one as a potential. Then you got bye week. Florida, I'm not ready to bury Billy in them like some people are yet, but I don't think they're ready for this one. Remember, that one's at Everbank Stadium in Jacksonville. Then the next week at Ole Miss, circle this one. Lane Kiffin mentioned last year, they just had us in the – they were just so much better personnel-wise than we were on the trenches. This is Lane Kiffin talking after the beat down in Athens last year. Because remember, Ole Miss went to Athens last year and got it put it on them. Granted, they lost their right tackle in practice earlier that week, but still, is Ole Miss in one offseason if they turn that roster around? Have they? I think they're closer, but are they there yet? It being at Vaught-Hemingway Stadium is one why I'm going to circle as a potential loss. Tennessee at home, I just think Georgia's about to go on one of those Alabama runs from a home winning streak. Granted, in 2025, that it's going to be put to the test because you're flipping the schedule this year. So they'll get Ole Miss at home again, Alabama at home, Texas at home. And yeah, that's a pretty good schedule right there. They'll be put to the test at 25, but I think this year I don't see them losing to Tennessee at home until Josh Heupel goes and wins a big road game. I know some people break 2022 at LSU. That was in the morning. I'm talking about a hostile environment. The stage has been set kind of game, prime time. Can he go operate that? I don't believe in that yet. Georgia, I think, going to win at home. UMass, that should be a win. And then Georgia Tech, the Ramblin' Wreck with Brent Key in year two. They're not ready for that, especially at Sanford Stadium. So really, I only have 3 at Alabama, at Texas, and at Ole Miss. It's got to be road games. It's not going to be any of the home games. And I think Clemson just – not poor Clemson, like old Dabo used to say. I remember they used to get a big upset. Oh, poor old Clemson, old little Clemson. Not that. I just think Georgia's getting them at a great time. Georgia's going to be pissed off all offseason. They didn't win the national championship. Kirby's going to be chirping all offseason. Hey, guys, we didn't get it done last year. We got Clemson, a perennial power in this sport in the last 10 years, coming into your state, Mercedes-Benz, Saturday night, August 31st. What are you going to do, guys? They're going to come into our state and win? You may not be saying something like that, but something similar. That's why this is a tough matchup for Clemson. Georgia's just better than Clemson on paper right now. And then I just think Georgia's going to be so focused on this game. I just don't see them losing it. So really the only 3. If I was ranking in an order, I'd probably go at Texas, at Alabama, at Ole Miss. I think Ole Miss can win this game, but again, November 9th, injuries for both teams. What are they going to look like? Obviously, Georgia has more depth right now than Ole Miss. Ole Miss has some key injuries at the defensive line, offensive line, where it really is going to matter in this game against a team like Georgia. That you got to go all 12 rounds for. You can't just play a quarter. Ole Miss showed you that last year. You got to go all 12 rounds with them. And again, a lot of teams are lacking depth now. Or it's young depth because the guys who stay 2 or 3 years, the guys like Quinnen Williams, aren't sitting there for 2 to 3 years developing. The next guy leaves and they go be on the next draft pick in 1 year. Doesn't happen anymore. So for Georgia, a successful season, I'll lay a much more difficult schedule than it has been, but I only see 3 potential real losses. I mean, it's 12-0. It's national championship. I haven't said that about any other team that I've done one of these on what would be a successful season in 2024, but it's national championship. Georgia's the best program in college football right now. That's me saying that coming off Alabama beating them in the SEC championship last year and being the SEC champion, and Georgia's beaten Alabama once since 2008. But I think right now, obviously, Nick Saban retired. Things have changed. Georgia's the best program in college football, and the expectation is to be 12-0, get that bye week, top 4. You're going somewhere to go play a playoff game, and your expectations are going to go win it. Just like you should go – Ohio State thinks they should go win it. Alabama thinks they should go win it. Florida State thinks they should have a chance in it. Oregon, Michigan again. Like, Georgia's there. Georgia is – it's a very simple video. It's national championship or bust. It's to that point in Athens. But again, what is a successful season for Georgia in 2024? national title, baby. But I appreciate you joining us on this segment of SEC Unfiltered platform. What is a successful season? Again, like, subscribe if you're liking this content. Hit the notification bell. You don't want to miss any of it. It's SEC Unfiltered content, SEC content, 24/7, 365. You have a fantastic afternoon.